All right, so get ready, because we are diving into a play that is like a masterclass when it comes to social commentary, but like disguised as a really gripping story.
Oh, absolutely.
We're talking about J.B. Priestley's
Uh,
An Inspector Calls.
yes.
And just a reminder for our listeners, this is set in 1912, but get this, Priestley wrote it in 1945,
Yeah.
right after World War II.
Wow.
Talking about a recipe for tension, right?
Yeah, it's really quite ingenious when you think about it, placing the audience on the precipice of monumental global shifts.
Yeah.
Like you've got 1912 with the Titanic
Right?
and the war that's to come, and then you've got 1945 reflecting on the aftermath of World War II.
Yeah.
Priestley forces us to think about, how much or how little we learn from history.
Totally. And he does it through this family, the Birlings,
Yeah.
who on the surface seem totally perfect.
Right.
They are celebrating an engagement. Everything's like fancy and happy, and then bam, Inspector Gould shows up.
Exactly.
Have you ever had one of those moments where as soon as someone walks into the room, you know something's about to go down?
Oh, absolutely.
That's Inspector Gould.
Yeah, and he's there investigating a young woman's suicide, Eva Smith.
Right.
And it's almost like his arrival is this like crack in this like perfect facade of the Birling family.
Yeah.
And with each revelation, that crack just spreads further and further,
Oh, yeah.
exposing all the hypocrisy and the social injustices that are sort of bubbling under the surface.
And Priestley does not hold back.
No, he doesn't.
Like, he uses each character to kind of dissect a different part of what's going on in society at the time.
Yeah.
Like Arthur Birling, for example. Like, he's the patriarch. He basically embodies, like, capitalist greed. And he has all these pronouncements about the future, and, like, they are so confidently wrong that it's almost comical.
Like it's that dramatic irony. The Titanic is unsinkable.
Yeah.
He claims completely oblivious to the irony of what would very soon unfold, but that's Birling, isn't it?
Yeah.
So convinced of his own success, so focused on climbing that social ladder
Yeah.
that he's just totally oblivious to how his actions impact anyone that he deems to be beneath him.
And it's so relevant. Like,
Yeah.
you can still find people like that today.
Oh, totally.
Like, they talk about personal responsibility, but then are totally blind to the systems of privilege that they benefit from.
Exactly.
It makes you think, like, who are the Arthur Birlings in our own lives?
Yeah.
And what blind spots might we have?
That's the brilliance of Priestley, though, isn't it? He forces us into that uncomfortable self-reflection.
Yeah.
But shall we move on to someone who might be even more relatable, I think, to a modern audience?
Okay.
Gerald Croft,
Okay.
Sheila's fiancé.
Right.
At first glance, he seems like a pretty decent guy, right?
Yeah. He seems fine.
But then the inspector drops this truth bomb about Gerald's past with Eva,
Yeah.
who he knew as Daisy Renton.
Yeah. And he tries to play it off like he was rescuing her.
Yeah,
But there's obviously a much darker side to their relationship.
totally. And Priestley doesn't shy away from that.
Yeah.
He really lays bare those power dynamics,
Yeah.
like how someone in Gerald's position with his wealth and status can use that to, exert control, even if it's under the guise of helping someone.
Yeah. And he can't even see that there's a problem.
No.
Like, he just can't see it.
It's classic, Yeah.
Man in a position of power taking advantage of a vulnerable young woman.
Yeah.
And he's just trying to rationalize it.
Yeah.
Can't see the harm that he's caused.
That's like he's blind to his own privilege.
Totally.
Like he's the hero of the story in his mind.
Yeah.
And then we meet Eric, and you see a totally different reaction to this involvement with Eva.
Oh, absolutely. That contrast is fascinating.
Yeah.
Because you've got Gerald trying to downplay everything.
Right.
And then you've got Eric who's just consumed by the guilt and shame of it all.
Totally.
And I think that speaks volumes about their characters and how they view their responsibility or lack thereof for their actions.
Exactly. Like Gerald and Arthur are just desperate to preserve their reputations to maintain that status quo. But Sheila and Eric are different. They're different. And I think that's where Priestley offers a bit of hope in this otherwise quite bleak play.
Yeah.
Because they're the ones who listen to the inspector.
Yeah.
And they take on board what he's saying.
Yeah.
And they're genuinely changed by it.
Yeah. And Sheila especially becomes kind of this unexpected moral compass.
Yes.
Like, she starts out as this naive kind of socialite.
Right.
But by the end, she's calling out her whole family.
Totally.
Do you remember that line where she says, "But these girls aren't cheap labor. They're people."
Oh, chills.
Chills.
Yeah, and she's absolutely right.
Yeah.
It's like a slap in the face to the rest of her family, especially her mother,
Right.
Sybil, who I think represents a whole other layer of social commentary.
Yes, she does. Sybil Birling, she's a character that really gets under your skin.
Oh.
She's the one who turned Eva away from her charity organization, right?
Yeah, the one who could have helped, but chose not to.
Yeah, and she does it all while, like, clinging to this, like, air of moral superiority.
That's right. Sybil really embodies that kind of performative charity
Yes.
that, unfortunately, we still see so much of today.
Totally.
You know, where it's more about appearances and social standing than actually making a difference.
It's like those Instagram influencers who are, like, donating to a cause just so they can post a photo.
Exactly.
But they don't actually care.
Yeah, it's for the image.
Sybil's, like, interaction with Eva at the charity, like, that was just cold. It's a calculated judgment.
And don't forget, she uses Eva's use of the Birling family name against her.
Oh, yeah, she does.
Well, talk about twisting the knife. That moment for me is so important in the play because it really exposes the limitations of Sybil's entire worldview.
Yeah.
It's not enough for her to just offer help. She needs to control the narrative.
Yeah.
She needs to maintain that position of power.
Yeah, and that need for control, it's like what blinds her to what's actually going on.
Absolutely, it stops her from seeing Eva's desperation.
And it's so sad because you see how easily things could have been different. Like if she'd have just shown a little bit of empathy.
A moment of genuine human connection.
It could have changed everything.
Which I think brings us to the heart of Priestley's message, doesn't it?
Okay.
He's not just criticizing this one family or this one social class.
Right?
He's holding a mirror up to all of us.
Yeah.
Asking where do we fall short in our responsibility to other people.
And speaking of responsibility, we can't forget about Eric.
Oh, Eric. Yeah.
He starts out seeming like a spoiled rich kid.
Totally.
But then, you know, his involvement with Eva is dark.
Yeah, his story is tragic.
Yeah.
Because it reminds there's no escaping the consequences of your actions.
Yeah.
Privilege doesn't protect you from that.
No.
In fact, it can often make things worse.
Totally.
He's trapped by his family's wealth and reputation.
Yeah.
Can't get out from under his father's shadow.
And you see that in like the confession scene?
Oh, yeah.
That scene is brutal.
It's heavy.
Yeah, you feel the weight of his guilt.
Yeah, you really feel for him.
And it makes you think, like, what if he had someone to talk to?
Right.
What if someone had challenged him to be better?
That's a question that runs through the whole play, doesn't it? What if someone had reached out to Eva?
Right.
What if the Birlings were capable of even a little bit of self-reflection?
Exactly.
It's all those what ifs.
And that brings us to, like, the most mysterious character.
Oh, yes.
Inspector Gould.
This guy.
This guy is like a ghost.
Right.
Like, he appears out of nowhere. He knows all their secrets.
He knows everything.
Is he real?
Yeah.
Is he just like a figment of their guilty conscience?
Well, Phantom.
Priestley keeps us guessing the whole time.
Right, to the very end.
And he does it on purpose, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's deliberate, that ambiguity.
Yeah.
He represents something beyond their world.
Yeah.
A moral compass that challenges all of their assumptions.
Yeah, and that final speech.
Oh, my God.
The fire and blood and anguish.
Chills.
Every time. Every time. But here's the thing. Even though the play is about this investigation,
right,
we never actually meet Eva Smith.
That's true. We don't actually see her.
And it's interesting because it makes her story even more powerful in a way.
I think so, too.
Because she becomes like this invisible but like ever-present force.
Yeah.
She represents all the people who are marginalized and exploited and forgotten.
She is the working class.
Yeah.
The voiceless.
Exactly. And she has all these different names.
Oh, yeah.
Eva Smith, Daisy Renton.
Right.
Like, she's not one specific person. She represents like an experience.
A collective experience of injustice.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's like Priestley saying, this could be anyone. This could be your daughter, your sister, your friend.
That's scary.
And that's a chilling thought, isn't it? Because it makes us think that we could be part of the problem.
Totally. And then right at the end,
oh,
when you think the Birlings are off the hook,
yeah,
that phone call,
oh, tell me about it.
another young woman, another inspector on the way.
Classic Priestley. Like what?
That ending is amazing.
It really gets you thinking. So do you think they learned anything?
That's the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, did any of it actually sink in?
Right.
Or are they just going to go back to blaming everyone else,
Yeah.
not taking responsibility for anything?
And dodging accountability.
Priestley leaves it open, doesn't he?
He does.
Which I think is genius.
Yeah.
Because he's not just making the Birlings look in the mirror.
Right.
He's making us do it too.
Oh,
you know?
Yeah, totally.
Like, are we any better?
Yeah.
Are we willing to learn from our mistakes?
Right.
Or are we so blinded by our own self-importance.
Yeah.
That we just completely miss how our actions impact other people.
It's like that moment when you realize you might have, like, judged someone too quickly.
Yeah.
Or ignored someone who needed help. And it's like those everyday choices that you make.
Yeah.
They suddenly feel a lot more significant after you read an Inspector Calls.
Totally. And I think that's why this play is still so popular.
Yeah.
Why it still resonates with audiences.
Yeah.
It's not just some old play. Priestley tapped into something really profound about human nature.
Yeah.
About the dangers of just not caring.
Yeah.
And, the responsibility we all have to look out for each other.
It really makes you think, like, what if we all had an Inspector Calls?
Right.
Just showing up every now and then, keeping us on our toes.
Yeah. To, like, make us question our choices.
Maybe we don't need someone else to do that.
Okay.
Like, maybe the real challenge is to be our own inspector.
I like that.
To find that sense of responsibility within ourselves.
To look at the people around us.
Yeah.
Especially the ones who are struggling.
Yes.
And not judge.
Yeah.
But to have empathy and want to help.
And to speak up,
Yes.
Even when it's hard.
Yeah.
Even when it's uncomfortable.
Even when it's, like, rocking the boat.
Exactly, because that's how we make a difference.
Be the change.
Yes.
That's awesome. Such a good message.
It's a good message to end on, I think.
It is. So to everyone listening, we're curious what really stuck with you about an Inspector Calls.
Yeah. What would you have done differently?
Yeah.
If you were in the Birling shoes?
Yeah. Oh, that's good. What would you have done?
Keep those questions in mind.
Yeah.
As you go about your day-to-day life.
Because it's not just about reading the play.
No, it's about what we do with it.
It's about taking action.
Exactly.
I love it. Well, this has been such an insightful deep dive.
It has.
Thank you for all your insights.
It's been a pleasure.
And to our listeners, until next time, keep asking those questions.
Yes, and keep learning.
And we will see you on our next deep dive.